Hello, everybody. Super excited for you to all be here on Built by BIPOC and joining me to meet some amazing entrepreneurs. I am Carissa Begonia. I am a business coach for BIPOC entrepreneurs, a LinkedIn expert, and top voice. I'm a second generation Filipino American daughter of immigrants and the first and only in my family to start my own business. I do believe that entrepreneurship is the path to equity and that life design is liberation. And at Conscious Exchange, we're creating this ecosystem and movement of BIPOC entrepreneurs with a shared mission of achieving time, location, financial, and occupational freedom for themselves, as well as their families and their communities. So, thank you again also for joining Built by BIPOC, where I interview BIPOC entrepreneurs and how they've built their businesses, what their missions are that drive them, and really seeing the full journey, right? And hopefully, these series are here for you to learn education, to be educational as well as inspirational to see what's even possible for you. So today I am welcoming my client and friend, Jerry Fu. He's the founder and CEO of Adapting Leaders, helping Asian leaders become more visible, vocal, and valuable. Welcome, Jerry.
Hey, Krista. Hey, everybody.
Well, awesome. So thank you so much for joining me on this show. It's really, I really love to help people see, like I said, what's possible for them. Sometimes when we want to become entrepreneurs and we're like, yes, we want to do the thing, and we don't see a lot of folks who look like us doing it. So it's super important to me from representation standpoint to be able to showcase, like especially my wonderful clients, what they're doing in the world, so that hopefully folks in the audience can also see themselves in you, right? See what's possible for themselves.
Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely.
So why don't we start off with just telling us a little bit more about yourself, your business. I also, I believe in getting to know people as humans, not just business owners. So would also love for you to drop in just maybe some fun fact that we wouldn't necessarily know about you from, say, your social media platforms.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Some quirks about me. So my parents came over from Taiwan for grad school, and so that ended up in some weird locations because my dad's career was just a strange one. He finished a master's in chemical engineering initially up in Wisconsin, and then when employment was harder to come by than he expected, bounced around to Tennessee, and then even spent some time in Texas because my mom was at Arlington for a semester for her grad school work. So had an atypical, you could say, cultural upbringing, right? Like I jokingly say that I didn't grow up with an Asian clique because we talk about Asian cliques all the time. But then when I get to Houston for college, and then there's Asians everywhere, but I just still didn't hang out with them because I didn't know what it was like to have an Asian clique. So, but fun stuff about me. So I actually took some years of German when I was in high school. Like it was just a program I kind of got funneled into, and of course my mind was so small, my world was so small back in high school because I was just happy to be comfortable, playing video games in my air conditioned, bedroom, as opposed to really having a sense of adventure and seeing what the world had to offer. And so I thought to myself, well, when am I ever going to use this German? When am I ever going to speak it? And of course, as I started to get the travel bug, I met Germans everywhere, Yosemite, Australia, Prague, wherever else. And you're just like, I could hear God telling me, I tried to open your eyes. Right. And so that was the first kind of taste of realizing what kind of culture was out there, even before I knew what actually I had at my disposal. So other fun things though, yeah, my first taste of international travel on my own and not out of, family obligation to Taiwan was visiting Dublin, Ireland for a pharmacy school rotation. And that's where I started to really say, oh, wow, there's a lot here. There's a lot I'm excited to see and explore. And so, yeah, I think enjoying lots of different kinds of cuisines is also just kind of comes with the territory at that point because you just say, well, the food that I'm eating here, I better learn to like it, right? Or at least be willing to try it because even though chains are everywhere, right? McDonald's is everywhere, Subway is everywhere, and you're just like, why would you settle for that kind of thing, right? And then, yeah, I did post some things on salsa dancing at some point, but that is definitely a big part of my life that I cannot ignore. And yeah, just that's the idea of being active and being musical and being creative, right? There's just a lot that is wonderfully rich in that community. And then other things, yeah, like I do play piano and guitar in my spare time. And the tough part is if I have to choose between music and dancing, I usually choose dancing pretty much every time.
Yeah.
But so yeah, between reading interesting books, yeah, like just a lifestyle that's active and adventurous is definitely a priority for me, whether I realize it or not. But when you get the thrill of going to ethnic restaurants, right? And we call them cultural exploration dinners, and you're just like, yeah, try lumpia, right? Try all these other great things, and it's just fun when people realize, there's more to Texas than just Tex-Mex and barbecue down here. But yeah, I'd say those are the fun things of me, independent of anything like I talk about with my day job or my side job. So here we
Yeah.
are.
I love that you really leaned into the question of
Yeah.
fun things, because a lot of times when we introduce ourselves
Mhm.
in situations like this, where you're being, like a podcast even,
Mhm.
or networking, it's like, hi, I'm Jerry, and this is my business, and this is where I work, is what I
Mhm.
do. And I so appreciate, and why I ask people to tell us more fun things about them is, I think people they don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, and they buy like the
Mhm.
personality, right? Like,
Mhm.
so they're getting to learn if they like you. So thank you for all those different angles and different parts of you, the explorer, the adventurer, the speaking German, dancing, musical. I'll say from one age into another, even talking about creative endeavors sometimes feels something that a lot of us feel like we might have to not hide anymore, maybe
Mhm.
necessarily, but is secondary to,
Mhm.
again, our very specific job or role. And,
Mhm.
and so we can explore a little bit more of that in a minute. But I'm going to flip it back then too, because you are a business owner, and I really
Mhm.
would love for folks to know what your business is. What do you do? Who do you serve?
Yeah. So I started my business in the heart of the pandemic, actually. The backstory, real quick, is that, yeah, as a pharmacist, when I hit a rough patch in my career path, that the only reason I was able to find more gainful employment was that I had agreed to take on more leadership roles. And the confidence to get those leadership roles came from facilitating a leadership seminar through a pharmacy leadership nonprofit some friends run. And so teaching leadership gave me the confidence to become a leader. And then you realize that solved the initial problem, but not the longer term problem, which is that I realized I could get more jobs, but they were still failing me. Like these jobs were like icebergs. And so I would hop from one to another after about, they'd melt after 1 or 2 years. And so I said, you know what? I really want to focus on people development. I'm tired of this business cycle that, basically I have to, change my resume every 2 years. So what if I made people development a priority because I wanted to serve Asian leaders the way I wish I had been prepared, to handle challenges that are inevitable if you expect to have a career that, keeps you employed at the very least. And so, yeah, my heart is for Asian leaders, particularly leader managers and directors less than a year into their role that realize that, hey, you know what? I'm tired of getting overlooked. I'm tired of getting passed over promotions. I'm tired of other people taking credit. And I'm tired of not being able to call people out or hold them accountable when they take things from me when it's inappropriate, right? How do I speak up for myself when when I'm asked to work extra shifts again? How do I demonstrate my value so that I'm not going to be lost in the round of cuts, right? Especially if I'm doing work that other people are taking credit for, but I still lose my job, right? Because people don't realize that credit is due to me and not other people. So, learning to give people a voice, really, I think is one way of putting it, right? And then
Mm.
giving them the verbiage to help them, whether it's through role play. So, yeah, role playing through coaching sessions or facilitated workshops or keynote presentations where we can share poignant examples that it's like we model success for them, right? And we say, okay, let's model success for you so that you can have an idea of how to increase the frequency of success in your own lives.
Yeah. So it sounds like you started your business,
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of folks that I know do, out of your own experience, out of
Mm-hmm.
something that your struggle, your challenges, becoming a leader,
Mm-hmm.
staying, keeping your your status as that leader, and just
Mm-hmm.
being a leader in general, right? Like I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a glorification of, oh, you're the leader here. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of work, especially when you're in
Yeah.
middle management. You don't even get paid enough for
Mm-hmm.
that, but it is that next step, say, for your career progression, the
Mm-hmm.
trajectory. So what do you find when you said you focus on Asian leaders, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And what has been something more common, I think, for Asian leaders
Mhm.
in their experience of or in their experience of becoming,
Mhm.
getting a leadership role,
Mhm.
maintaining it, staying with it, in it, right?
Mhm.
That might be unique and different from folks of other identities.
Yeah, I think the main challenge that you realize is that we come from a culture where following the rules is rewarded, right? When we follow the rules, we jump through the hoops, we get the good grades, we go to the good school. And the problem with that, right, is that when you shift from being a rule follower and maintaining that approval versus being put in a position where you realize you have to take more initiative on your own and the map is not clearly drawn out for you, that becomes the first challenge. The second is when you know that expectations are being broken, and in your attempt to be the pleasant and popular uh, person that doesn't rock the boat, when you realize I have to introduce conflict into a situation, or I have to initiate a difficult conversation or unpleasant topic, that I don't want to lose this identity that I've either been given or it seems very familiar and comfortable now, and to be able to reinvent yourself as someone who trades popularity for respect, right? I think those are the common things to us. And I mean, on some level, because I talk to Greek people and like Nigerians, and they all say, no, that shame is this is the shame that you experienced growing up is what we feel that too. So this is not necessarily exclusive to us, but it is magnified because we are the ones who lived with it. But I think though in these particular races, especially for Asians, that particular transition is very commonplace, and so to give people more resources and support in terms of being able to realize, okay, this is how you make that transition, and this is how you deal with the discomfort of that transition, so that you can finally realize that you don't need the approval of others to be an effective leader. Um, that is, I think, where the magic starts to happen.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing about the shared experiences
Hmm.
of folks with Asian identity, but even just people of color, right? There's a
Hmm.
lot of
Yeah.
similarities,
Hmm.
and so I often talk about being the first only other in
Hmm.
the room,
Hmm.
and as you're speaking, you're dropping things like taking German.
Yeah.
Growing up in Dallas, right? Or is that did I get sorry,
So originally Wisconsin, and then now
Wisconsin,
currently Houston. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sorry,
Currently Houston. Yeah.
Wisconsin to Houston, and
Hmm. Ultimately.
not having a community of Asians in
Hmm.
Wisconsin, and then even going to Houston, and being like, oh my gosh. Um, so even this almost like separation of like
Hmm.
identity and your own, like, oh wait, surprise if
Hmm.
there are more people who look like me, and this maybe shared culture.
Yeah.
Um, what is your experience have been? What has your experience been like as potentially being that first only other, and challenging some of these norms and expectations of just the way you present? Right. Like, I know you do
Hmm.
salsa dancing, for example,
Yeah.
and that is also typically you don't see folks like us saying that that's what we do and it's one of our
Hmm.
passions. I
Hmm.
also salsa dance, and people are surprised that I can do all the dance. Like I can do a lot of like Latin dances, and it again there's always an expectation that this is the box you fit in,
Hmm.
stay there, and sometimes we even hold our own expectations of ourselves in that.
Hmm.
Another one I know you do is conflict, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Asians aren't most people, but Asians, we're not running towards conflict. You have your stoic Asian parents who are like, we don't want to talk about that, we're gonna put
Hmm.
that over there. We here's some food. It's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting, Jerry, how you often are choosing to be in positions where folks that look like you aren't expected to be, and or so. What is that like? And why? What kind of motivates that? Also potentially.
Yeah, I guess one phrase I'll use is you feel like a minority in a minority, right? Like even funnier is that I'm actually left-handed, which is another minority angle for to take, right? Because not only it's like 1 in 20, I think, is left-handed, but even worse, right? Just for people who aren't familiar with Taiwanese culture, left-handers are considered strange. And when my parents, had me in the U.S. and they saw that I was left-handed, they were very tempted to they were very strongly considering switching me over to my right hand because my mom was left-handed initially, and they switched over to her right hand in order to conform to the standards there. Which, ironically, it's harder to write Chinese with your right hand than left. But again, that's a logistical problem, not a cultural problem. And so, yeah, honestly, finding that sense of belonging was extremely lonely for a long time because, right, we grew up in an environment. There's not a lot of people that look like us. Like people are telling me to go back to Japan where I belong, even though I'm a U.S. citizen, right? And then even worse, you're home in Taiwan, and they're like, your Chinese sounds strange, like your Mandarin sounds strange, and so you're just wondering. And then now your own parents are imposing their own expectations. You're like, do I make anybody happy? Do I belong anywhere? And so, yeah, so this own insecurity becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, right? Where you're just kind of like, well, I don't feel like I belong, therefore I don't belong. And it doesn't matter how much people try to accommodate for you or show you, hey, no, we're here for you. The best friends will stick by you, but even then, the most loving ones will also say, hey, like, you got to stop this mindset. Like, it's killing us, right? It's killing you, and it's killing your relationships. And so it wasn't until I found a multicultural environment for myself that I realized, hey, you know what? I'm not so dissimilar, right? Like, there's a great book called Third Culture Kids that talks about this community of people that, grew up in like Argentina and then Singapore. And then they said, no one relates to me, but then they eventually find their community online. And so, yeah. And so when you realize, I'm going to build my life around like my passions, it's easier to find people who relate to you. I think that's the other thing, because sometimes, yeah, like, as our friend Betty Chan says, right, just because, just because we're in the same race doesn't mean like we're going to relate, necessarily in that same way. But that's been the experience. And so it took a while for me to find a community. But when you did, right, when you realize that the things that, it's like the ugly duckling like story, right? We're just like, oh, like I don't belong here. It turns out, no, it's this beautiful swan, like a very quirky swan, but that's basically kind of the metaphor that we use, right? And we realize, oh, I didn't have to fit in because there's no way I would have. And so when you start to build around things and around causes you love, activities you love, it's usually a lot easier to find that sense of belonging, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So real with sense of belonging on one end of it's off the bat, the way you write, is unacceptable by your own culture. That was hard to hear. I haven't heard that about Taiwanese culture, and then the messaging you get then like from the start, something is off and you don't belong, and then moving through all the journey, right? It doesn't. That's very resonant, and I'm really glad that you're able to own your passions and also pursue them and find your people. So it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, Jerry, I'd love to start kind of hearing your experience of entrepreneurship and
Yeah.
kind of what was maybe that impetus that I know you became a leader, but was there like a turning point? Was there like an exact like memory or situation that happened where you're like, enough, like,
Uh-huh.
we're not doing this anymore, and I'm going to change it, and I'm going to help others be better at this too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. Just, I think you and I have had ongoing conversations as there's this bigger theme of this fear of risk and this fear of rejection, right? Whether it came from this background of not fitting in, and you're like, well, I don't want to be rejected, and maybe that kind of slows the entrepreneurial growth, right? Because, right, we talk about Sarah Blakely's story of just she became immune to rejection because she tried to sell copiers and fax machines, right? And then they just got, after that, she just didn't. That just gave her the boldness to say, oh, I'm going to sell whatever I need to sell, and it's okay if people don't like me, right? I never had that, right? I had the opposite experience where it's just like, no, rejection hurts. Don't experience pain. And it's not to take away from my mom's, attempts to just give me a carefree life, but at some point, like, the reality of the world will hit you, and whether doesn't matter how prepared you are, it will hit you. And so this journey of entrepreneurship really started 6 years ago. 2017 was when I said, okay, I want to try to become a coach or a facilitator full time as a career. But I was so scared of rejection and failure, I didn't even know how to start a business, right? I just knew that I wanted to do this. And so it became this occasional hobby, right? Well, you pay me $50 to do this thing. And right, I've never charged this much before. And so it stayed a hobby because there was not enough, you could say, of a circumstance to say, okay, no, I gotta get some skin in the game. And basically, the culmination of that happened in 2020, right? Not surprisingly, we had a pandemic. I was actually in the middle of formal coach training when we had to go virtual because of the pandemic. And
Yeah.
so now, right, the strain of the day job, even though thankfully my boss has never missed a paycheck, and so we were able to pay for my bills, cover my bills during the pandemic, which a lot of people couldn't say they did. I said, okay, now that I'm networking with coaches and people who own their own businesses, and you say, okay, well, I'm seeing it in action, I'm seeing how it's possible, right? Okay, how long will I put this dream off? And so, yeah, October, actually 3 years ago, was when I said, okay, file the LLC, you put the money in the business bank account, get a website up, and then start this journey. And you realize just your addiction to approval, like that's very dangerous, because you realize compliments don't pay your bills, right? You're just like, oh no, oh, good job, Jerry, so excited for you. And then you're like, where do I find money? I don't know. Uh, so I actually do have an uncle in Taiwan who owns a restaurant in there, but I never got tips from him on how to run it. Like, I hadn't talked to him in many years. So to say, am I the first entrepreneur? No. Am I the first to run like an information and service based business? In consulting? Yes. So yeah, that's a different journey than trying to run a restaurant. So yeah,
For
here
sure.
we are. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were a coach yourself, you were in training. You had to pivot in the pandemic like so many other folks do.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for sharing that. You used your job to also help fund this,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes people think, for folks who do have a job, I know
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people aren't in situations, they start their businesses because they don't and they have to figure it out. But
Mm-hmm.
in your case, you still had your job, were able to use what was going on there to support this venture of yours, right? And I want to just point that out because sometimes people feel like, oh, I'm not, and are told by other entrepreneurs, unfortunately, that, oh, if that's a hobby or that's a side hustle, if you're not really in it doing it all the time for all the time, I'm like, no, none of that shame stuff about
Mm-hmm.
you got to hold a job and it's going to help you make this thing work, because entrepreneurship is hard, y'all. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not
Yeah.
easy cake that oh yeah, let's just travel the world and
Mm-hmm.
coach while I'm in Bali or something. It doesn't work like that.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever you're seeing on Instagram, it doesn't work like that.
Mm-hmm.
So no shame on that, but and
Mm-hmm.
so thank you also for highlighting that. And you know, you're a coach who also decided to work with me as a coach.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so what was kind of that reasoning of, okay, because you started in 2017, 2018, 20,
So, well, officially 2020. So it's been 3 years since
officially
I officially
2020.
started my business. Yeah.
Yeah. So officially 2020, and
Mm-hmm.
what was happening then, and that you're like, okay, you said not everyone's, you're not really taught, you don't really know how to start a business, right? What am I
Mm-hmm.
doing? Right.
Yeah.
So what was that transition like, or what was that decision point?
Yeah. It was terrifying, right? Because initially there's a great thrill, right? Because um, you're saying, wow, I have a business structure now. I actually can, have a real domain name and not just some Gmail or, free WordPress account, because it just feels so amateurish when you do that, right? But when you put this in, and it's great up until you realize you need to find, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to build up capital? How am I going to, find revenue streams? And, for a systems person like me, as a pharmacist, I wasn't worried about finding, new business. We had a biz dev team, we had a marketing team that took care of those kind of things. And then you realize when you're saying, oh, I have to wear all the hats now, where do I find money? And you don't know. And then unfortunately, right, just a heads up, guys, if you do start a new business, there's a lot of people that are going to kind of take advantage of the fact that you're a novice at the situation, and they'll offer you solutions that are probably outside your price point, but they know how to massage your pain point enough to say, oh, well, let me just pay for this solution. And then like, you don't really get better. And now you've drained all your capital on a solution that's not actually helping you move forward. Right. So be careful with that. But yeah, the first step was, okay, where do I find money? And I saw my risk aversion, just like full frontal in my face, just being like, hey, you got to find money. Like, you got to get over yourself, right? As the saying goes, scared money don't make money. And, and you have to say, okay. And so my solution was, well, where can I find money now? It's like, okay, I contracted with a private tutoring association. And so that was enough for me to break even. And I'm very big on making sure it's like, if I compartmentalize this amount of money, that's the amount of money I'm going to use. Like, don't just bleed personal costs every time you're like, well, I might be overdrawing my business account, so let me find creative ways to use like personal money for business expenses. And that's a dangerous precedent to set, right? But yeah, that was the first part, was just saying, okay, who can offer me referrals, who can throw things at me, if I'm not directly finding business. And so that's still the turning point, right? Things moved in the right direction, but a little slower than I would have preferred. And to get to a point of awareness to realize, hey, ultimately I'm going to have to kind of go after what business that I want on my terms, on my pricing, as opposed to settling for referrals. That's been the transition that I know I need to work on this next year. So that's how I found you, right? Because I just said, you know what, maybe there's a better way. I'm not looking for instant gratification necessarily, but we all like it when we like we have that we catch that first big fish, and you're like, oh, you can kind of exhale just a little bit. But yeah, so the second year, so the first year, I survived by doing private tutoring, and then I appeared on about 70, 80 podcasts, just going nuts, just trying to get that off the ground. Because, and I'm happy to quickly elaborate on that, right? For those of you who are interested in podcasting, it's a good way and a very affordable way to get your name out there, because you're basically exchanging value, like valuable content, in exchange for access to an audience you didn't have otherwise. So as long as you can provide valuable content, and it aligns well with what the coast needs and their brand, you're more than likely going to build a great network of people that already have platforms out there that can get your name out there. And so that was how I kept bootstrapping, because I was like, okay, podcasting does not require a lot of money. It does require a lot of time, which I have. And so let me do that. Once I got my coaching, go ahead.
To be clear, guesting on podcasts,
guesting on podcasts, no,
having your own, just to
correct.
Make sure that was clear.
Yeah. You can start your own podcast, guys, and that's a whole different strategy. But for me, I knew I did not have the capacity to host my own or try to market that, so I was content to just make a circuit as a guest. And
a pretty large one, 70.
Yeah, I got a little carried away. I won't deny that.
That's fantastic. That's amazing. Yeah. So okay.
Yeah. So then the next year, after I got my certification officially, when I got enough hours to pass that exam, that helped open a couple more doors. And for those of you who are looking at certifications, it's basically a good way to get your foot in the door. And at the same time, no one really, companies will look for that, but people look for people, right? They're high, much like Carissa said in the beginning. People want the Carissa Begonia experience. People want the Jerry Fu experience, right? And so to offer something unique that goes beyond just saying, well, yeah, his quality control is all right. He obviously passed the exam, but there's a lot of certified coaches that, not to undermine the credibility of the credential, but you may or may not get someone just good just because they passed an exam. So just take that with a grain of salt. But at the same time, so that started to open more doors, right? I started coaching through other platforms that are nice, and but understandably, guys, you realize once the money comes in, you say, okay, well, this is nice that I'm in the black, but how much in the black, right? Is this enough to sustain the lifestyle you're looking for? And so, that's why I signed up for Carissa's program, to say, hey, you know what? Let me take a bigger chance on this, to say maybe I'm missing something, to see if I can move myself forward faster, or if I'm able to, what do I still need to shore up so that I actually get this plane off the ground and it's flying at the altitude I wanted to, preferably sooner than later.
Yeah. Sooner than later, right? And I think that's the thing that what coaches, even you as a leadership coach, help people, get places with more ease. Mm-hmm. and potentially faster, right? So that's what I do for business owners. Mm-hmm. I love that. I love the breakdown of the process. It's like, well, first, money, income. What's my bandwidth? What's my budget for investing in myself, aside from the coaching certification to become a coach, but being a business owner. And one thing I want to point out for a lot of folks is sometimes people don't realize that you get a coaching certification, or a lot of consultants are, starting businesses based off what they used to do in their former jobs, right? Mm-hmm. And you're good at that. You get good at that, right? The business end of it is different, though, is a separate hat, if you will, to wear, that you probably don't have expertise in because you are a newer business owner, right? So wanting to separate those two like roles that you
Mhm.
play as when you are starting your own like service-based business is oftentimes you are an expert already on either coaching again or the expertise that you come with from your previous job,
Mhm.
but owning that I'm new to the business side, right? And
Yeah.
wanting to expedite that or make this simpler or easier because there's a lot of noise out there, like you were mentioning.
Mhm.
So, and a lot of these programs, these sort of coaching certifications, don't teach you that the business side. They teach you how to be a coach. And I remember when I was going through my emotional intelligence certification, it was like a module or like a day on, well, this is how you get clients, and this is the business side of it. I'm like, oh my
Mhm.
God, my programs can last a whole year like
Mhm.
on teaching you how to like do marketing and sales and even developing your programs, your
Yeah.
packages and stuff. So
Mhm.
um, it's wild to me. So for folks who are kind of thinking or maybe experiencing that, like these are two distinct roles that you now own
Mhm.
as the business owner, and you probably are really good at one. And the point is, you're also trying to learn how to be again a business owner, the CEO.
Mhm.
But the other thing I was taken away from what you were sharing was criteria
Mhm.
of okay, this is my like my budget. This is what I need to do.
Mhm.
But you were talking about criteria even of people who can help because there's a lot of folks, there's a lot of noise out there,
Mhm.
right? So what were some of those things that like were your criteria of even vetting me and
Yeah.
saying, all right, like she's not that.
Mhm.
So yeah, I am curious.
Yeah. What are the gears clicking inside here? Yeah, I mean, part of it was just my own struggle to say, well, I'm not grossing a lot of money, or if I am, it's not at a point where I can start to really cut back at my day job. And a big factor was to say, well, what is the level of transparency for these coaches, right? Because there are a lot of people saying, hey, let me help you build your six-figure business. And, you know, do they take the time to actually understand, who I am and where I'm coming from as they, build a strategy around me, right? Because anyone could just say, hey, yeah, here's the package, here's the playbook. Sure, let's walk you through it and you execute. But if it's not true to who you are, there's no point, right? For me, right, I've already mentioned I'm very risk averse, right? I hate rejection and conflict, and yet somehow I understood that those had to be two of my biggest niches if I expected to, number one, for people to have any kind of credibility to take me seriously. And then so I said, yeah, I said, you know what, Carissa, she's vouching for people like me. She's helped people like me. Let me bet on this. Let me bet on this boat and see, bet on this horse and see where it goes. And yeah. And the biggest thing I'll be happy to say, guys, like there are other clients in the same group cohort that are moving faster than I am, and it's not that I'm jealous. Sometimes there are frustrating days I am. I'm just like, why isn't this going faster? But it is just to highlight, hey, like this is the area you're going to have to really move on and work on if you expect to really see the results that my other clients are seeing, and that is a fair assessment.
Yeah. And I know when you reference like your cohort,
Hmm.
you're friends with your cohort. I know you're doing some
Oh,
of your own
absolutely.
lives and things like that. So it's like
Yeah.
like not really competition of like, oh man, frustration, but
Hmm.
also hopefully for you too, seeing like, yeah, um, that's they're I know them. They're not some
Yeah.
person over there.
Yeah.
Like they're my buddy and my
Yeah.
friend, and it's maybe hopefully motivating.
Hmm.
So let's and I know that what I love so much about all of y'all together,
Hmm.
like the group of BIPOC entrepreneurs together
Hmm.
was encouragement.
Yeah.
Like it was kind of it's not like let's leave you behind. Let's like come on, let's go do this
Yeah.
thing. What else do you
Yeah.
need, right? Like let's
Yeah.
make this thing happen. And I'm still seeing that
Hmm.
even over the next few months that you have some stuff coming up,
Hmm.
some LinkedIn lives and things like that with your cohort members. So
Yeah.
because it's more fun to
Hmm.
do it and much more palatable or easier to start when
Hmm.
you do it with friends. So
Hmm.
that's exciting for me to see you and the others kind of still working together, even outside. Y'all are done with my program, right? And
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
still lasting. That is huge for me to watch and to witness the support that's ongoing. Well, with that, Jerry, I'd love to also know what have been three things that benefits you got out of the program working
Hmm.
with me. Yeah, what are the three? What are some? major things that have
The first thing I can definitely am thankful for are all the spreadsheets you gave us, just as tools. Just it is. It's funny, but it's true, right? Because to be able to quantify the things, because that was one of my traps. So it's just like, well, let me just make more money than what I did previously. Let me just keep, eventually, like it'll land. And it's like, Jerry, what are you afraid of measuring? Like, why are you afraid to measure it, right? Because you know enough to make sure you don't get overdrawn in the bank, but like, are you just playing not to lose, or are you actually going to play to hit like the financial targets that you know that you determined and declared are important to you? So I think that was the first big thing that I knew was necessary for me. The second was, the network that I now had technically had access to, because Carissa's like, hey, meet people, right? It wasn't just about the coaching program itself. You hosted plenty of socials to say, hey, meet more people, right? Like, let's bring this caravan together, and not just people that are successful, but people that can relate to our stories and see how they intertwine and do that, right? The term I like to use is, if you want to run a marathon, start hanging out with marathoners. And so this is that kind of thing that to do there. So that is the second thing. And the third thing, I think, just kind of what you referenced, right? The intentionality of the group to not just say, okay, well, we're done with the cohort. All right, good luck, see ya, right? And it's just the ongoing relationships that are now in play in order to do that. So between the content of the meetings, and then along with the network you have access to, and then the ongoing relationships that have come from that, those are three things that I definitely appreciated about the last 6 months.
Yeah, that makes me so happy to hear, because that's why I moved from doing one-on-one coaching to the group, and y'all surprised me actually with how valuable the group experience was. Because when we did that 31-day challenge on LinkedIn, for you to post every day on LinkedIn, I know so many of you were like, I would not have done that on my own. I did it because of that, maybe friendly encouragement or boost or competition, whatever you want to call it, from my peers and my friends in the cohort, and we did it together. And again, seeing y'all like support each other was, I think that even was a big solidifier of your relationships too, was actually doing that challenge. So I'm glad that my intention actually exceeded my expectation. It's also why now I'm lessening even my one-on-one work, because I used to value like one-on-ones here and say group experiences here, because you didn't get that customization and you didn't get that one-on-one attention. It's, yes, you want some of that and equally need this group. So it's like not so much this as it is like this now of like, this only being hired because I only have so much time, so to do individual work with. But really awesome to hear that. Jay, lastly too, what are you most proud of, and what are you looking forward to most, as you think about the future ahead as an entrepreneur?
I mean, I'm excited that I was able to put together a signature package that I wouldn't have happened without the input and feedback from the group, right? And so even as I iron out the exact, there's tweaks that can always be made, nothing set in stone, but I am excited to put together a signature package that says, hey, let's help you as an Asian leader become more visible, right? How do you get the right kind of attention? How do you become more vocal, right? Let's make sure you don't trip over your words in the middle of difficult conversations. Let's make sure you become more valuable. Say, yes, I matter, and here's what I do, and here's what I bring to the table. And even if you disagree, like, I'm okay with the fact that you disagree, right? And so these are the things that we want to help you with, so that whether you're dealing with personal conflict or professional conflict or internal conflict, let's make sure you can navigate that. Because I tell people, difficult conversations was the prerequisite for me, the one obstacle that continually stood in my way in order to become an effective leader. And so that's why that vocal piece is particularly, like, you could call it the wedge, right? Because when you learn to have the right mindset around conflict, or a more productive mindset around conflict, then you're really going to start to move things.
Yeah. I love that. Visible, vocal, valuable. It's your thing. It's like your framework, and it's so clear that it gets me excited to hear you talk about breaking that down so simply.
Mhm.
Well, with that, I would love to just hear and for you to share with everybody as we wrap up here. What are you working on now? What are
Mhm.
you really excited about? And maybe is there anything that you would like to share with people of how they might be able to get in touch with you or how to work with you?
Yeah, sure, sure. So the the highlights from this past year actually came from a podcasting opportunity where I actually got to publish a chapter in a book. Right, so now I'm technically a published author on top of all these great things. And so, yeah, I mean, it's so you guys never know what's going to happen as you build your network. So that's one option for those of you who are like, I barely know this guy. Sure, maybe a $25 book is not a big risk for you, and you can try things out. But for those of you who have been tracking with me for a while, yeah, I'm excited to offer the signature package. Whether you do the full 5 month enchilada, you could call it, or you do a 3 month like diet size sandwich, it's there for you, right? And if you're excited to learn more, by all means, please connect with me on LinkedIn or visit my website, adaptingleaders.com. Set up a call, whether you just want a free sample of coaching or you want to talk more about in detail about this coaching package and its terms. We're not here to push anything on anyone. I think that was another thing to tie back to Carissa. She was very good about being very gentle and saying, "Hey, these are the terms. If you don't like them, don't buy it. But if you do, I'd love to work with you." Right? And that was it. Like it wasn't because I've sat through really bad pitches where people keep twisting my arm and they're just like, why aren't you doing this? You said yes to everything else, and it's like, I don't need that. So, yeah, and in the same way, this is how I'm presenting my coaching package, right? Like there's a lot of great things, right? We're going to help assemble your toolbox. That's another new term that I've been playing around with lately. I've got a lot of great tools. Which tools do you like? Let's put your toolbox together that works for you. And then also, yeah, there's a lot of great literature. So now it's not just about knowing the answer right then. It's about, oh, I know where I can find the answers that I need. So between assembling your toolbox and then assembling resources and stories that will help you model the success that you're looking for, I'm excited to offer that to leaders and that I have a heart for.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jerry, for sharing all of this wisdom, your journey, you're just getting to know your personality and you a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more your story. I know that you focus on Asian leaders,
Mm-hmm.
um, and there were so many nuggets. I just want to kind of connect some dots here. Of
Sure.
I'm a published author.
Yeah.
I was on 70, 80 podcasts,
Yeah.
right? And so, as much as the work that you and I have done together, there's
Mm-hmm.
also stuff and you did that on your own. That was not something I taught you to do.
Yeah.
So you also have a lot to share and inspire people with and give people nuggets around
Mm-hmm.
for business owners,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So I will just drop that for folks who are listening, watching, that there's some wisdom around to get what is it like to be an entrepreneur,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and how did you do all that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's time consuming, or that's a lot of stuff sometimes, right,
Mm-hmm.
too, and sometimes it
Yeah.
is about your network and such, but that's
Mm-hmm.
pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And even being an author,
Mm-hmm.
even being on these different podcasts,
Mm-hmm.
say, that's applicable to leaders,
Mm-hmm.
right? A lot of times for leaders, right, you're looking to separate yourself from everyone,
Mm-hmm.
and a podcast will help you do that. Features on
Mm-hmm.
a podcast or your own podcast will help you do that.
Yeah.
Contributing to a book will certainly help you do that. So I think the audience, like whoever's watching this is Jerry's just been sharing some stuff about whether you are a leader internally
Mm-hmm.
or you're someone who is either becoming an entrepreneur or already is one.
Mm-hmm.
There's some of the things that you've done is definitely inspirational. And like I said, what I'm hoping people can glean from this is what is possible,
Mm-hmm.
because especially what I love to showcase is not the people, the gurus who've made it already. That's
Mm-hmm.
inspirational, but there's a lot of people talk about them. Like
Mm-hmm.
what makes it easier for me, or if I see that it's possible, is when I see someone who's um, just a real for this is not exactly the right term, but like a real person, right? Not
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
celebrity or
Yeah.
not a guru over there, but someone
Mm-hmm.
who is in my world that I have
Mm-hmm.
almost a 1 degree, second degree connection to,
Mm-hmm.
that you too can also be an author or a
Mm-hmm.
podcast guest on, and an entrepreneur, even if you don't have all of those celebrity-ish type of things, right? So
Mm-hmm.
thanks for highlighting all of that.
Absolutely.
Anything last to share before we close out?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing just to take away from the journey, guys, is like when you feel free to experiment and build prototypes and test them out, like, and this is true in your personal life or your professional life or your as a business owner, right? You're just here to, put a prototype together, test it out. It's silly and it feels cliche sometimes just to say use the scientific method toward to build a better life, but that's exactly it, right? Like so many limiting beliefs we hang on to that we hardly talked about in this episode, really, but right, those have held us back. And we said, okay, well, let's prototype this. If we don't like this belief or we don't like what it's leading to, okay, what new belief do we want to prototype and test and see if that works? Not just simply for our internal benefit, but that we would have to share that benefit not just for ourselves, but for the people we care about and the important relationships in our lives. So, my I'll leave it on this. So this is part of the design your life framework. So there's 4 things, right? Number 1, get curious. Why do I believe what I believe? What is it that I'm doing? Why am I doing this? Is there a better way? What would it be if there were a better way? Right. The second is to talk to people like Carissa or myself to say, hey, let's talk to people, see what they think. Like maybe they want to collaborate with us as we build this prototype. The third is to try stuff. So now that you've built this prototype, hey, like see what happens. Throw stuff against the wall, see what paint sticks. It's great. And then number 4, share your story. Right? Tell your story. People need to hear it. No one can tell your story better than you can, really. Like your parents might make a case, friends might make a case, but ultimately the world needs to hear it, right? Because just like Carissa's story of inspiration and whatever inspiring things to offer in my own journey, you never know who you're going to inspire or encourage that day. And they can't enjoy it unless you share it, right? So put that out there. Absolutely.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you, Jerry, for sharing your story with us. And folks, thank you also for joining Built by BIPOC. Built by BIPOC is about connection and inspiration to see what is possible. So if
Mhm.
you liked anything that Jerry had to share today, very much encourage you all to connect and follow him on LinkedIn, all the socials, his website, etc. And then thanks to you all. If you want to follow me, I'd love that. You can find me also specifically LinkedIn. I've got tons of different programs that are coming out in the next few months that are helping you find your path on different parts of your journey, whether you're newer, you're a little bit more experienced, right? And for me, it's really about bringing a lot of the BIPOC entrepreneurs together in so many of the different programs that I do. So thank you all so much for joining. I'll see you next time, and have a great one. Have a great day.